Right, we're live. Excellent. We've got Michael from the Isle of Wight Shakespeare Company here today. And we're also going to be talking to Holly from Isle of Wight Youth for Christ, who's got an amazing story. And Michael, he's got a speech from Shakespeare, which he has memorised, which I actually thought would fit in really well with what we're going to be hearing about this morning. So over to you, Michael.
Cool, I won't use that.
You won't? Okay, he's going to project.
I will, yes. All the world's a stage, and the men and the women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many different parts, his acts being 7 ages. First the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, and then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and his shining morning face, creeping like snail unwillingly to school. And then the lover, sighing like the furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. And then the soldier, jealous in honour, quick and sudden to quarrel, full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. And then comes the justice, in fair round belly with good capon lined, with his wise saws and his modern instances, so he plays his part. The 6th age slips into the lean and slippered pantaloon with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose well saved, a world too wide now for his shrunk shank. And so he plays his part. And the last scene of all, to end this strange and eventful history, is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans taste, sans eyes, sans everything. Yes.
Thank you very much. Go and sit down and enjoy the rest. I was trying to work out when I heard that which age I fitted into. But I stopped trying to work it out after a while. I wasn't too happy about it. 7 ages of mankind, but do you know, I think whatever age we might find ourselves in, ladies as well, it is possible to slip into things that you haven't planned on slipping into a lifestyle that you haven't planned for, and into a deep, deep hole that you just haven't planned for at all. And this is where Holly's story comes in. Yeah, come on up, Holly. Holly came to us about November, wasn't it, and just shared a bit of his story. And I just thought, wow, it's someone so young who's experienced almost too much, I would say. But the good thing is that you've been in a deep, deep hole, haven't you? And God's taking you out of that deep, deep hole. And that's the good news. That whatever age we're in, whatever hole we might find ourselves in, however deep it is, there is a God. He does love us, and he's going to get us out as we reach out to him. So it's great to have Holly here. We're going to talk to her for a bit longer than we did last time, and just ask Holly a few questions. We're just going to, like doing that, share her story. So it was like, from your childhood really, you got onto the wrong road. So just tell us a bit about that.
Okay, so for me, like growing up, I didn't really have any kind of structure. I didn't really have, like my mum and dad wasn't around, and I was put into the care system from the age of 2. So growing up, I started to rebel. Like no one told me what to do. So we used to run away from the care homes and always just try and be back with family, but they didn't want me. So I continued to just basically run away. That was really where I was at. I ended up being a teenager and kind of understanding what life was about, really. So that's a bit about me growing up. So I didn't really have any kind of structure, which started to lead to rebellion.
Right, so that led to you looking for like love and acceptance in the wrong places. So what sort of things did you get into?
Okay, so when I was like 13, 14, I got kicked out of school. So I didn't go to school really. So I started just waiting for my friends to finish school. So I started smoking, I started drinking, and this was just like minority. And so then, but on the weekends it started to get more and more, so I used to stay out all night. I started to get involved with the police, so I used to get arrested every other weekend. And then before I know it, I was taking different drugs. I got introduced to smoking cannabis. And this was just fun for a little while. And then I got introduced to cocaine and harder drugs, LSD, anything that you can think of, I've kind of taken it. So that's what kind of got myself into a full-time drug addiction and crime.
Right, so I meet a lot of people who say, well, especially when I was young as well, they said, oh yeah, I'll smoke a bit and drink a bit and go out and get drunk, but that's kind of showing that it can lead to other stuff as well. So did you get like right into the hardest drugs and heroin and stuff?
Yeah, so when I started taking drugs, I thought it was a joke with my friends. I thought we'd just smoke cannabis, we'd just sniff cocaine. It wasn't anything, it was just a party scene. But before I knew it, the people that I used to take drugs with wasn't there anymore. And there was just a group of us, 3 of us. So the more I took drugs, the more I realised I was on a constant high. And being on a constant high isn't good for anybody. So then I found the drug speed, and I ended up having drug psychosis. So I continued to take it, and I realised that there was no level to my mood. So I realised that I needed some kind of stability. So I took heroin for the first time, me and my friend did. And she was sick and I wasn't, and she vowed to never take it again. And I said, oh, I won't take it if you don't take it. But that didn't happen because it made me feel something different. It made me feel like I finally found stability in my moods. So then I became a full-time heroin addict. So then that's where I finally was high, but then I found a way to come down when I was home at night on my own.
Right, so it just probably a couple of years from like taking cannabis, or you're actually into like the hardest of all the drugs?
Yeah, so I started smoking cannabis when I was 13 because I didn't really want to feel anything, and I wanted to be cool and fit in with my friends and not be kind of a loner. And then when I was 17, I found heroin, so it was only taken a couple of years to get from smoking just a minor drug to the full-time like class A hard drugs.
Right, so you found yourself on heroin. What then were, I mean, how long did it make you happy, or for any time at all?
No. So when I was on heroin, I just didn't want to feel anything, and it makes you feel numb to the complete world. So when I was taking it, I didn't have no feelings. I didn't. Anyone could throw anything at me, and the pain just bounced off me. I was totally numb to anything that anyone said. I was just replacing it with just so much, and it wasn't nice. It just didn't make me feel anything at all.
Yeah. So how old were you then?
So I was 17 at this point.
17.
So I was just wandering through life, like when people say like you're in your early teens, that's when you're experiencing the most. Like I don't really know what I was experiencing because I was just existing. I was just like, people used to cross the road from me because they didn't want to be on the same side of the street from me, just because I was just a walking disaster, really.
So would you say that was like the lowest point?
Yeah, so when I was 18, because I didn't have anywhere to live at this point, because when I was 16, my nan, who was my legal guardian, she died. So I was kind of like, well, where am I going to live? So I ended up just being in women's refuges, just like hostels, and then I was living on friends' sofas, just anywhere that I could just stay, really. And then I got my own flat, and then when I got my own flat when I was just turned 18 at this point, that's when I thought I found it all. But it really was the lowest point in my life, because people were just selling drugs in and out of my house, and I had no control. Like, before I knew it, people had got my key and they cut the key, and then someone else had cut that key. So people were in my house all hours of the night, and then I found myself just being just living in a full-time drug den, and that was just the lowest of low points for me.
Right, so when you reach that point, and obviously something that you hadn't planned for, but when you reach that point, what happened? Did you call out, or did something begin to change? Or?
Well, when I was 13, 14, I used to go to a youth group, and it was a Christian-based youth group, and people used to tell me about God all the time, and I was kind of not open to that, because I had so many questions just because of my childhood and the things that happened to me. I was kind of just saying, well, if there was a God, why would abuse happen? Why would there be so much pain in the world? Why would people die? Why would my nan die so young and stuff? So there was so many questions that nobody could answer to them, which I realise now that God's only got the answer. But I was kind of open, and to one point, at this point when I was open, something had to give for me. because I was just at the end of myself. And it sounds really strange, but when people say like, oh, like when you're 19, 20, your life's just beginning or stuff like that, but I was at the end of myself. I was completely at the end of my life, and I was just like, I literally cried out to God, and I was like, God, like, if you're real, like, you need to bring some people into my life, not necessarily Christians, but just some people who are going to have like a positive impact on my life.
Right, so you actually did that, you called out to God, so your lowest point.
Yeah, when I was really low, and I didn't have nobody around me or nothing, no friends, no family, just me on my own. I cried out to God and I said, God, like, you're just going to have to get me out of this mess.
So you cried out to him. What then?
Well, when I cried out to him, nothing happened, nothing changed, and I was like, oh great.
That's significant, isn't it?
I was like,
you cried to him, right, what now?
Yeah, like, I was like, okay, I was expecting this big miracle, this big bang, and loads of people to come into my life and to get out of this drug den, and for all of a sudden all the pain to go away that I felt. But nothing happened, and I was like, great God, thanks. Like, you know, what's the story here? But I was just wanting my life to change that much. I cried out to God again, and I said, God, please, like, I literally begged him. I was on my knees and I was like, God, like, please, I can't live this life anymore. Like, I wanted to die, but I was scared to die. So I was like, God, like, you have to do something. And then he began working.
Right, so what actually happened? What's the first thing that began to change?
So I remember that, like, that time when I was really desperate, I cried to God and I said, God, please just bring people into my life. And I lived in a high-rise block of flats, which wasn't nice. It had needles everywhere. It was constant people blaring music out. It was one of them things where you just want to walk past, one of them flats, you want to walk past as fast as you can. And I remember one time there was a knock at my door, and I was like, no one ever knocks my door, people just always walk in. And it was a couple who must have been in their 60s, and I was like, what do you want, kind of thing. They were like, we feel that God's told us to pursue you. And I just laughed and shut the door, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? Yeah, it was at that point, but at that point I didn't realise it. I thought it was two strange people just knocking at my door for no reason. But they continued this daily. They were knocking my door, and they just never gave up on me. And then one day they come at my door and they said, look, God's told me to tell you to come live with us. And that's where everything changed, really.
Right, so you actually went and lived at their house?
Yeah, like, I think I was that desperate, I was just willing to do anything, even if that meant moving in with complete strangers. It was still in the same area, except, like, I'm quite thankful because their house was quite out of the way, so no one really knew where it was, and no one knew where I was. I just kind of got up and left. Like, I didn't really tell the council that they could have their flat back. I was just up and left, and they dealt with all that, which was amazing. But yeah, so I moved in with them, and they fed me, they clothed me, they put a roof over my head. I had nothing. I went into the house just in a carrier bag, and by the time I left I had a full wardrobe, just because they really felt God say, like, you need to bless her. So I just moved in with them, and they fed me 3 meals a day, and like, just loved me back to life, really, with the love of Jesus. But I still wasn't, I kind of was like, well, God, you've done this, and that's what I want you to do. So, yeah.
Right, so what happened after that? They suggested something else to you?
So they could see that I was wanting to change, but I wasn't wanting to change. They could see that I wanted a different life, but I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for that. I was still young, and I was still wanting to go out and party and club and stay out till all hours in the morning and take drugs. But they knew they heard me like crying, and they were like outside my room praying for me, and they could feel the pain that I was in. But so one time they suggested a teen challenge, which is a faith-based rehab down in Wales, and I was like, I'm not going there. You can't have your phone, you don't watch TV, like, it sounded like a big call, and I was like, nah, not for me, like, not happening. I'll just go into a secular rehab, it's fine. But they were like, no, we've really prayed about it, and we really feel that you should go. So they took me down there on the 10th of April last year, and it was like, I got there and it was living with 30 other women. And I was like, no, I'm not living with 30 other women. Some of them were like 30, and half of them were Scottish, so I couldn't understand a word that they were saying. So I kind of just stood there and was like, what are you saying to me? Like, I don't understand anything. But they took me down there, and they stayed with me until, like, because you have to have like an intake kind of thing. So they stayed with me, they got a chance to look around the place where I'll be living, meet some of the girls and the staff members that I'll be living with, and then they left. And I was like, oh, okay. So they took me down there.
Right, so At this point, would you say that you were still addicted to drugs?
Yes, at this point I'm still taking drugs, I was still taking heroin, I was still taking all of the kind of drugs. So when you're down there you do a detox, so mine is for 10 days, and you do a Subutex detox, which is just like a small work tablet that you put under your tongue, and it slowly releases the drugs out of your body, and slowly gets you used to not having that amount of drugs in your system. So that's what I did, and it was probably one of the hardest things that I had to do, was realising that I have to live life feeling normal things and not having to feel numb to the constant things that are going on around me.
Right, so you start to take your drugs away, effectively,
Yeah.
with your consent.
Yes, yeah.
But in breaking addiction, what then? What do they try and bring into your life?
So if anyone's ever tried to break an addiction, even if it's like addicted to sweets or chocolate or something, it's not the easiest thing because your body is so used to it and you just want it. So when I was trying to come off drugs, my body was not reacting well to that. So the staff there, they're just amazing. Instead of drugs, they were pouring Jesus into me. But I kind of didn't want to hear that. I was kind of like, no, I just want to get off drugs now, and that's me. I don't want this God thing. I'm thankful for your help. But there was something different about them. There was a joy that they had in their eyes, they were just alive, and they were just so free. And I wasn't that. I was so bound and consumed with fear, but that they still loved me. So I think when I did my detox, instead of them giving up on me, they continued to pour into me, and they just love me like the way Jesus does.
Right, so this is the great thing. It wasn't just a case of drugs being taken away. They were offering you something else. They were offering you the love of Jesus.
Yeah, they were offering me a love that I'd never experienced before.
Yeah.
And that was before I even got to know Jesus personally. Jesus working in them reflected the love of him. So it still was shown on to me without me knowing him.
Was that? Did you find that was enough to fill the gap in your life? Because there's obviously a big gap if you come off something that you've been relying on. Was that enough?
At that time, I didn't feel like it was, just because it was still really fresh to me, and I still didn't understand much. But yeah, it became enough. Slowly, as the months went by, so I was down into challenge for 11 months. And when you're first there, there's different stages. So you have induction, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then phase 4 is where you're back into the community. And in the induction, they're so laid back on you. They're like, right, okay, we understand you're learning to adjust. So I can't use that to my advantage. I was like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to chill. I'm going to sit back and not do anything. But the more I went on in my program, the more intense it got, and the more it became enough, and it made a difference.
Right. So all this time you're saying that you weren't a Christian. At what point did you actually become a Christian?
I've only been a Christian for just over a year now, so September last year. And from April to September it seems quite a long time, but when you're in rehab it is a very short time, because the time just flies and you're you're in the world, but you're not in the real world, because you're in a place where everything's done for you. People cook your meals, people have control over your money, people are just wanting to wait on your hand and foot, just like the way Jesus would. So by the summer I was really wanting something to change. I thought there's no point in me being in rehab if I'm not willing to make the effort. So I remember opening my Bible one time and I was thinking, oh God, please just help me. But I wasn't prepared for him to let him in, because I had a block up against people. So I wasn't prepared to let someone who can't even see into my life. And one time I was just reading the Bible and I had so many questions. And I remember just this one verse stood out to me, and it was, we all fall short of the glory of God. And from then I gave my life to Jesus, and my life just turned around, and my heart just completely melted, and I had a different understanding of life altogether.
Right, so actually receiving Jesus began to change things then.
It began to change things, and the more I read the Bible, the more I understood about things. And I was so consumed with fear that I went in, I wasn't able to sleep. I couldn't sleep without the light on. I just wasn't able to function daily, because I was just so scared of people coming to kill me. I was scared if I went to sleep I wouldn't wake up. That's because I was on drugs for so long I didn't feel anything. I was just completely numb. And so I was just so consumed. But the more I got to know the Bible, the more I got to read, and the more I got to understand that that's the only thing that can bring you peace.
Right, so where are you at now?
Okay, so now I'm on a gap year. So I'm doing a YFC.
That's Youth for Christ.
Yeah. And I've been on the island since September now, which has been pretty amazing, and I love living by the sea. That's one of the main things. And I just absolutely love what I do. I absolutely love bringing Jesus to young people, because the way people brought Jesus to me in such a special way is something that will always resonate with me. And the way that I can bring Jesus to young people, it's not necessarily speaking about him, but the way that I act and the way that I hold myself and the way that I love people is something that is so special to me, and I love just seeing people starting to understand the gospel.
Excellent. So have you been meeting people in your sort of position, or similar people with addictions and that?
Yeah, so we both of us, we work in NYC Youth Cafe in Newport, and there's a lot of broken people there. A lot of women stuck in drug addiction, alcoholism, broken homes. Some of them are in and out of prison, always in court, and it's just amazing. And I remember the first time that I went there at the start of September, I was like, I can't do this, like they're too much like me. It was like looking at myself in a mirror. But I remember Jesus was saying to me, just do it. Like, just do it like I did it for you, so I want you to do it for other people. And I was like, God, like, I can't do this. And just being able to have conversations with young people just about my life and share my story and knowing where I'm at now. So there's a young girl there who one day I knew it was God that spoke through me. I said, you don't need drugs, like you just need Jesus. And she just laughed at me and she said, why are you not offended? And I said, because that's the worst thing that you can do. The worst thing you can do is laugh at me and you don't want to hear it. I was like, but I'll still be praying for you. And that night she left with a Bible, and it was only 2 days ago that she texted me saying, Holly, like, I've got notes and I've got some stuff I want to discuss about the Gospel of Luke. And she actually went to college for like a whole week, like a couple of weeks ago, and she hasn't been to college for a full week in months and months. So it's just amazing what God's doing.
Yeah, so you stood here, it's living proof really that someone can hit a rock bottom and call out to God.
Yeah, definitely.
God does actually answer.
Yeah, I was totally at the end of myself. I was at the bottom, like, I shouldn't be alive just because of like the amount of drug overdoses that I've taken and the amount of time that I've tried to end my own life and the things that I've done to other people, and I've got myself into really tricky situations. I've realised that it's only by like God's grace and God's faithfulness that I can stand and even deliver to other people and not have fear and walk free. So it's only to God how he can like bring me from the bottom and rise me up because of him.
Yeah, well that's absolutely brilliant, Holly. It's great, the journey that you're on, and it's obviously an ongoing journey. It's very recent, isn't it? And
yes.
So thank you ever so much for coming, and thank you for sharing with us today. Yeah. And Holly's going to be around, just keep the camera going because I've got a few things to say, but Holly's going to be around afterwards, so if you want to speak to her, or if you're watching on video, Twitter. Tweet her. But yeah, thank you very much, Holly. Big round of applause for Holly. Ever since we first met Holly back in November, I've just been really taken with this story. And I just want to put the verse, one of my favourites, John 10:10, up on the screen. And this is what it's all about, really. This is you can past it. It was there. There we are. This is actually what's happening. Jesus says very clearly, the thief, he's referring to the devil, comes to steal and kill and destroy. And listening to Holly's story there, that's what was happening. There was a life, a beautiful young life, which was being destroyed. And Jesus actually comes to do the very opposite. People say, I don't want religion. Well, neither do I. Religion's not going to cure anything, but Jesus is. Jesus is God become man. Jesus is alive. Jesus is real. Jesus changes lives today. And he says, I came that they, or you, may have life. And not just life, but have it abundantly. Abundantly. So it's not a case of religion just says, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. But Jesus says, all these things are rubbish because I've come to give you life. And I've come to give you life in all its fullness. It's Jesus who gives life to the full. It's Jesus who can really offer the life that we all crave for. And I was thinking, Holly's probably, you know, a heroin addiction is probably as addicted as you can get. But there's all sorts of levels of addiction. And you did just refer to that. Even addiction to chocolate, we all laugh about that. But there's a lot of people addicted to food, addicted to wine and drinking bottlefuls because behind the closed door no one knows. Addicted to pornography because you don't have to go to a shop to get it now. You can just click a button on the computer. There's lots of addictions, and every type of addiction has the same effect. It's there to steal, it's there to kill, it's there to destroy. And the message is, and the good news is, we've met someone who shows that addictions can be broken and that life can be poured in. And that's the message. That's the message this morning. Whatever the addiction, if it's a little one, if it's a big one, if it's tying us up this morning, then Jesus' message is the same. I've come to give you life, and life to the full. Life that's bigger than any addiction. Life that's better than any addiction. It says in the Bible, don't get drunk on wine. And it doesn't leave it there. Because otherwise it's saying just don't get drunk. It says don't get drunk on wine, but rather be filled with the Holy Spirit. There's something better than any addiction. If we would dare to reach out. If we would dare to reach out to our God. So that's all I'm going to say this morning. But if you want to, we will offer prayer and we will offer ministry. So if you would like some prayer, there's no addiction too small, there's no addiction too big. If you'd like some prayer, if you say, God, I want that life and I want it abundantly. Maybe we're not even addicted at all, but you say, I want life and I want it abundantly. We can pray for that. We can pray for that life. And that's what I'd like